Hi, you're listening to the Childfree Wealth Podcast. We're your hosts, Bri and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
All right, for all you Childfree Wealth listeners, so if you've been listening for a while, you'll find that Bri and I are both married. I've been married for so long that I don't even have a clue what single life would be like, and I don't want to know about it because I hear it's bad. I help a lot of single people with their finances, but I have no clue what it's like to be single. And Ashley helps us out with some things. Just for a disclaimer, she's our editor and content person, so she is paid by Childfree Wealth, so you can infer whatever you want out of that, but that is a disclosure. And Ashley was like, hey, what about the single folks? And, talking about the single perspective. And I'm like, awesome. So come join us on the podcast. So we're going to dive into what is it like to be child-free and single, how it impacts your finances, and a little bit about Ashley's journey. She actually started with me, a year and a half ago almost, like a long time ago. And we were working on her finances, and then she was helping me with the book and all that. So we go way back. So Ashley, kind of introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you? Kind of what's your life? I see a cat behind you. I mean, tell me about the things that matter.
Well, first, a point of order, and that is that I'm not actually single. My finances are single, but I myself am not single. I refer to myself more as solo. I am polyamorous and I have multiple relationships, but my finances are my own. I live alone with cats, so I guess maybe I don't live alone. I have 3 cats. Right now, I'm working as a freelance writer and an editor, and Childfree Wealth is one of a few companies that I work for, and it's all been great. And actually, it's thanks in large part to your help that I was able to take this step. And in addition to changing careers in 2021, I used to do museums. I did museums for 12 years. I was a curator. I was an executive director. I was in charge of collections, museum management, all that stuff. But switched over to digital content writing and editing in 2021, and then made the leap to fully freelance at the beginning of this year. And it's been good. I like being my own boss.
Yeah, and I get you. And by the way, you're right in the terms. I mean, I was thinking about single versus married when I was talking about it. We get the sink versus dink, but I think you qualify as like a dink because you have more one income coming in anyway, even though you're a single person or not partnered up.
Yeah,
solo.
yeah.
Or whatever you want to call it.
It's hard to say, honestly. I was very underpaid in museums, and I've almost tripled my highest income from museums, which is kind of sad if you think about it. When I worked jobs that required a master's degree and didn't pay you like you had a master's degree, but I digress.
We could have a whole separate discussion on how jobs aren't paying what they should out there. But that's probably a topic for like 3 more episodes as it goes through.
Oh, absolutely.
So, all right. And for people listening, if you haven't heard the term, I do love using the term soloist. A soloist is the technical term that I'm using now to replace what's called a solo ager. A solo ager, the statistics say, childless women, they just have childless is what the term they use for the census, 32% are not married and were never married. Now, Ashley, you were married though, right?
Twice. I was married twice. Twice I tried that whole monogamous heterosexual thing, and it did not work out for me. But, sometimes you don't make the mistake enough the first time. You got to try it again.
Is there a third time?
No, there will not be a third time. No, we're good. We're good now.
Yeah. So from a financial standpoint, the way I look at it is you're a soloist when you're like managing your own stuff yourself. There could be other people in your relationship, and one of the interesting things with child-free couples or families or structures is like all these weird things. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. I don't know what, married, not married couples. Financially, the question is, are you doing it alone or with somebody else? And your answer is you're doing it alone, right? Except for the cats.
I am well, see, as much as I would love for them to get jobs and start pulling their weight around here, they just haven't yet. So we'll see how that goes. But no, it is just my income at play here.
By the way, the answer for the cats is they need to have an Instagram account that can start pulling in money, and then you have that, that big money.
See, I really only have the time and energy for one social media account, and that's just Facebook, and it's just, friends and family. So I don't have that kind of energy. Maybe I need somebody to manage an Instagram account on behalf of the cats.
Yeah, I have no time for any of that. I'm on Facebook only like reluctantly. But all right, so let's go through this. So Ashley, when I started out, and I'm going to give my side of the story, and Ashley, I'm sure will give a different side. But my side is Ashley reached out and said, hey, I want to buy a house tomorrow. And it wasn't exactly tomorrow, but I want to buy a house. And my answer was, why? Was that not kind of where we started?
You were a little confused, yeah. And I think maybe it took some time and you truly grasping how many times I have moved in my life to sort of understand, like, yes, okay, you know what, I'm child free, I'm not married, I don't have other things tying me down. I'm even a freelancer at this point. I'm not even tied to any one employer now. But to have a home base and to be able to make a home my own and be able to put time and money into it, that feels meaningful to me, because I haven't had that. I owned a house once when I was 26 and young and stupid, and I bought it for the wrong reasons. And those reasons were I was tired of my apartment complex, and I had some well-meaning relatives say, you should buy a house. No. Now I actually have a firmer grasp on how much this will actually cost me. And I would be going into it not necessarily excited to spend that kind of money, but also knowing that I would be spending that kind of money. Instead of being 26 and being like, oh, the mortgage costs the same as rent. It's fine. I can afford this. No.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm having trouble with this whole housing market right now. And I'm just, because my own bias. Right now, the numbers are just crazy. To give you a little insight into my life, it's Friday right now when we're recording this. On Tuesday, we took photos of our house. Wednesday, it was listed. Thursday, we had a contract, and today I signed it. And by the time you're watching this, we will have sold our house, most likely, and be renting. So it's not because I can't afford a house. It's because renting allows more flexibility. And when I talk to child-free folks, my answer is buying a house is a choice, not a requirement. And actually, I hear you. You had moved like, how many times was it total?
I've moved 35 times in my life. And I'll tell you, I'm trying to think, when was the last time I even went 2 years without moving? Now, I haven't talked to my landlord lately here. He's very hands-off. Technically, the end of this month, the end of June 2023, is 2 years since I moved in here. That will be the longest I have gone without moving since I lived in that house that I bought for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and we could hold a whole separate episode on buying houses for the wrong reasons, but let's focus on the right reasons. And Ashley said, hey, I want stability of the house, and I want to have that. I want my own space. I get that. Now, I'm going to challenge people just because that's what I'm going to do. And it was actually 2022 when we first met, and like housing was even crazier actually then.
I think at the time when we started talking, the interest rates hadn't gone nuts yet, but I also had a lot of debt and no money set aside. So,
well, that's the other part of it. So I say you're ready to buy a house when you're out of debt, you have 20% down for the house and an emergency fund. And that's really kind of rough for some people because, I mean, that could mean years before you buy a house. But Ashley, you're on that path now, right?
I am on that path, although I'll tell you full disclosure, I am leaning more towards 10% down to give myself even more of an emergency fund and going with a conventional loan and just paying PMI and putting as much money into extra payments as I can to get out from under that as soon as possible. But I also live in a very cheap area. If you live in a part of the country where you're looking at $400,000 or $500,000 to buy a house, you're right, 20% on that, you're going to save up $100,000 to put 20% down on a $500,000 house. That is untenable. Where I live, I could probably buy for between $150,000 and $200,000.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a rarity. I just saw something went by. One of my colleagues put it out, and they have a rent versus buy affordability index. And there are only 4 major metros where it's worth buying. And it was like Detroit and like Philadelphia. Like, it was like, I was like, all right, whatever. And everywhere else, you should rent. And I know that sounds weird. And if you're listening to this, the standard life plan says you got to buy a house, you got to get married, you got to have kids, you got to like all that stuff. And buying a house is a choice, not a requirement. And in some areas, it's almost not a choice to buy because it's so expensive. And that's the hard part. Luckily, you can work from anywhere, so you're working in a low cost of living area. is awesome.
Yeah. And I chose to move here. That's another thing too, that I've moved so much, not so much by choice, but because there was a job that I had to move for. And, I moved to this state in 2016 for a job, and I have stayed here because I like it here. And I moved to the city in 2021, because I had a partner here and because I like the area. And to be able to say, hey, I moved here because I wanted to, that's been a big thing for me.
That's fair. So you're handling all your finances yourself. Let's just, as a soloist.
With your help and with my accountant, yes.
Yeah. Well, everybody I had somebody say to me that working with me is like doing forced adulting. And I was like, that's kind of a weird way to say it, but okay.
Take the compliment.
I don't know if that's a compliment or a curse or what.
I mean, they didn't say that it was unenjoyable, did they? They just said it was forced,
I just laughed at it. I'm like, that's not a bad assumption. So what do you think is the biggest challenge of being soloist and managing your finance?
I mean, if something goes wrong, you have a big bill, your electric bill comes in higher than expected, your car repair, your rent goes up, whatever. It's on you. You've got to adjust your budget around that. And on the one hand, it's very freeing because it's like, okay, especially me as a freelancer, like, oh, I have this big car repair that I've got to pay for. Okay, well, you know what? I might just do some more work this week, or maybe I'll, write an extra article or two or something to kind of make up the difference. But ultimately, it's on me to take care of that. And I'm not splitting my bills with anybody. When I was married, it was, okay, I'll take care of the rent and you take care of, the rest of the bills, or, oh, we'll split everything 50-50. And it was, you could kind of look at your pay and be like, okay, I'm responsible for X number of dollars for this week or whatever, and look at everything that was left as just, this is your money versus, now you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. And it's hard to plan these things. And having an emergency fund is incredibly important. Having an extra cushion of money in my checking account is incredibly important. I'm very lucky now that I don't live paycheck to paycheck anymore, as I did for so many years. So that is helping. I went to the grocery store this morning and I didn't buy that much stuff. And yet my bill still came to $125, and was chatting with the cashier, and she's like, yeah, I don't know how people are getting by. And I said, I don't either. And part of me feels a little guilty that yeah, it's annoying to shell out that much money for not very much groceries, but at least I can still afford it. I'm wondering, if I had not made these changes to my finances, how badly off would I be right now with inflation being as high as it is?
Yeah, my wife and I were out grocery shopping the other day. We just stopped in for a couple things and walked out. It was like 100. I'm like, can we walk out of a store without $100 bill? And we were like carrying 3 bags.
Yes, that was
like had some cold cuts in it and some sandwich stuff. Like we were going away for 2 days and just hanging out. I'm like, really? This is ridiculous. But there's a study, and I'll include it in the show notes. Fidelity put out looking at solo agers, and they found that the solo tax or single tax, and it's not a real tax, but the price that it costs you to be single and not have anyone else to rely on for your money, costs you somewhere between $400,000 and $1,000 and $1 million across your year. $400,000 and $1 million across your lifetime. The way it works is like, you can't share your apartment, you can't share the milk, you can't and they started adding that all up. You have one car you can share between 2 people. Apartment you can share between 2 people if you have to. But if you're on your own, somewhere up to $1 million. And I have no clue how you make that happen. I mean, do you feel that single tax?
I do, but here's the thing too. And I feel guilty about this because I did improve my finances so much. I like not having to share the space or the milk or whatever else. Like it's, when I got my second divorce, my ex moved out, and I wanted to stay in the apartment that I was living in at the time because I knew that I didn't have the budget to find another whole place that I was going to be able to afford on my own. And I had the cats, I had 2 at that time instead of the 3 that I have now. And I ended up having to get a roommate, and he was fine. He was a good dude. We lived together for 11 months until I moved out of there. And I tell you, as soon as I could swing a place of my own that I did not have to share, I found one and I moved out, because that is how much I wanted to live alone. And I love living alone. Living alone is amazing. yes, I probably have more space here than I need necessarily. And I'm hoping to buy a house that's maybe just a little bit bigger than this place. Just, maybe some more storage space would be good because that is something I'm lacking here. But it's so good. So I don't know, that extra cost, yes, it sucks, but it feels worth it to me.
Well, and I feel you. I mean, I love my wife, but there sometimes I'd like my own space just to get away for a little while.
You have like a 4,000 square foot house. I thought you guys
this week. It's changing next week. Now, for those watching, this is my office. It's got like a kitchen next to it, and it's like an old ensuite. Yeah, I'm spoiled. Like, I'll admit that. But so you said, hey, if I hadn't improved my finances, I'd be in trouble. What'd you do to improve your finances?
Oh, I did so many things. Well, primarily I changed jobs. That was the first step. Although the first job that I had in the new career in digital content writing and editing paid me as much as one of my museum jobs did, which was kind of a bummer. The benefits were better though. So I took on freelance work and I paid off $25,000 worth of debt last year in about 7 months. And last year was my grand year of being a workaholic. And I tried a couple of different freelance gigs at the beginning of the year and nothing was really working. And then around the same time that you and I started meeting, I was interviewing to become a freelancer with the Motley Fool, and they ended up loving me and I love them. And it's been 14 months and I'm still there editing and writing for them. And it's been great. I mean, even now as a full-time freelancer, I work probably 60 hours a week. But I don't mind. It doesn't feel like a hardship to me. And for me to be able to do this and enjoy my work and also be able to save a substantial amount of money to buy a house and to be able to make purchases that make my life better and stay out of debt and also pay for my own health insurance now and pay my regular bills and just to be able to do all this stuff. It's been so good.
And you like flew right by it. Paid off $25,000 in debt in 7 months, just like kept on going. Like, to other people listening, that's a huge achievement, and when I talk about getting out of the paycheck to paycheck cycle, getting out of debt is the core, you gotta, yes. It's a must. It's not even a could. How'd you get it? How'd you pay off $25,000 in debt in 7 months?
Well, I think I had you sitting on my shoulder, like whispering in my ear the entire time. Here's the thing about me. If I have the ability to change something about my life, I will change it. I'm not the kind of person that is willing to just sort of roll over and just let things go. I'm stubborn. I think that that's the secret of my success. I am maybe just more stubborn than most people. And when I found that I could work more and make money and snowball my debt, this is paying things off, smallest balance to largest, which technically costs you more money in the end, because ideally, if you want to save money on your debt payoff, you would start with the whatever balance has the highest interest rate first. And I did not do that because I wanted those early wins. When I started, I had a couple of small, I had a bill that was 0% financing. I had a credit card that was 0% financing, small balances. I paid those off first because that gives you that momentum. And I kept going. I would wander around my neighborhood and listen to music, my afternoon walks, and just be in my notes app and plotting like, okay, this is the next thing I'm going to pay off and it's going to be paid off on this date. And then I'm going to change to this one. And it felt so good. And my original projections when I started, I guess would have been April 2022, just running the numbers at that time, my thought was, maybe I'll be out of debt by the time I turn 39 at the end of January, 2023. I finished in October. So I started in April and I finished in October. Yeah, about 7 months. So I don't know. I got into a groove with it.
Yeah, and the hard part is it's easy to get into debt. It's hard to get out. I mean, just reality check. And I tend to be a snowball method person, put people on budgets and work it through, and it sucks. But it sucks for a period of time. But then the other part of this was, and Ashley's kind of playing this down, so I can trumpet her own horn and say, she got a debt, and then she had built behaviors that was putting a whole bunch of money in debt, and immediately started putting that to her emergency fund and saving for her house.
Yes.
Like, besides, the cats needed something or, whatever else, any other regular emergencies that come up.
They were spoiled before. They are so very spoiled now.
But there was a behavior, and it just, debt's no longer a choice, and I just kind of put it all towards my goals. And if I have this right, I mean, by this time next year, you'll be either in a house or pretty close, or looking at finding the right one. Is that kind of the next year or so?
That's the hope. I don't like those interest rates, but I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. I mean, I'm not planning on calling my landlord and being like, can I renew for another year? My downstairs neighbors are just month to month with him. And I think that might just be me too. And we'll see, if I find the perfect place for me in January or February next year, maybe I'll see about it then. I'd like to be able to take my time, and I'd also like to be able to get whatever I buy into move-in condition for me beforehand. The worst thing is you move in somewhere and then you got to do all this painting, cleaning, whatever. No, if I buy a place and I've got, a month or two where I'm paying rent here, which is very cheap, and also a mortgage, and I'm also fixing the place up, that's great, because I'm looking at that as a long-term commitment for me. There's no sense in me buying a place if I'm not going to stay there 5, 7, maybe 10 years, maybe longer. Who knows? I don't know what the future holds, but I really like the way my life is going right now, and I'd like to ride this train as long as I can.
And that makes good sense. I will say one of the things for the Soloist, I was looking at this. I have notes going back to when Ashley and I first met back in February. And I said, hey, it was in April, I first said, hey, by the way, as a solo person, you need disability insurance.
Yes.
Because it's your own income, and if you get hurt, you got nothing. And at the time, Ashley was like, yeah, I got to pay off my debt too. I'm like, okay, but we need to get this. Do you remember this debate?
I do. And that reminds me, I need to follow up with them again. I don't know what their deal is, but yeah, that is another thing, that feeling of kind of dangling over a financial cliff. Like I feel good about where my savings are at this point, and if I did have some catastrophe, I've got money in there. It might delay my house plans, but ultimately I wouldn't have to go into debt again unless something really catastrophic happened, and we'll just cross our fingers that isn't the case.
Absolutely. And what she was saying is you got to check back. She's actually applied for disability insurance now. It's just a matter of the process. I bring up the disability insurance over and over and over because for the Soloist, it is like the most important, because your income is your income and that's it. Like Social Security disability pays like nothing. Like it may literally be $1,000 a month for many people. So that makes it hard to live on. So let me shift a little here, Ashley, and ask you some of the harder questions about being a soloist. So you're child-free, right?
Yes. Since I was about 8 years old and I found out my mother had her tubes tied after she had my younger brother, I was like, I want one of those.
You're ordering your tubes tied at 8 years old? Well, that's impressive. I had somebody the other day, I was talking to some press people, and they said, well, maybe it's just a phase people are going to grow out of. I'm like, no, I got people literally getting sterilized in their early 20s. And you were trying to order it even before that.
No, I did finally, it wasn't a tubal ligation. I was able to have non-surgical sterilization at the age of 28 in Arkansas from a male doctor in his 60s. So I don't know how I managed that, but somehow I did. There was a little bit of a lecture. This is permanent, right? Yes, that is the whole point.
Yeah, we can have a whole series of discussions on mistreatment of child-free folks by doctors. But so I hear, and I don't know anything, but I hear that dating as a child-free person is interesting. So will you date people with kids, or are you child-free everybody, or kind of how do you look at it?
See, okay, so I'm child-free. I don't have kids myself. It doesn't really matter to me whether people in my life have kids or not, as long as they realize that I am not going to be like a bonus parent, in any sense of the word. I can be, that kind of, that friendly role model, that grown-up friend that mom or dad has that, the kid sees occasionally. Whatever, right now I'm in a relationship with someone. We've been together almost 4.5 years at this point, and he does have a child. And, I know her, I've hung out with her, she's got a mom. I'm not her mom. I'm not involved to any extent. If she's belt testing for Taekwondo, I might go along for that and cheer her on. But it doesn't matter to me whether people have kids, because I'm not going to live with them and I'm not going to be in that parent role.
So I've heard from others I'm just never going to date somebody with kids because I'm super child free. But you're saying, I'm still child free. I'm just not going to marry them, move in, be a parent. So who cares? Kind of what's going on when they're in general.
I've had people question my child free cred for this, and you're dating somebody with children. Oh, you're not child free. Did I give birth? Did I adopt? No, I didn't do any of those things. Actually, oddly enough, the older I get, the more I actually do like kids, and the more sure I am that I made the right decision not to have any.
That's kind of funny, the two combo. But yeah, I think you're right. There's some gatekeeping in the community of, are you really child free or whatever? The definition I use for child free is you don't have kids, not planning on having kids, which fits you.
That ship has sailed.
If you want to date somebody that has kids, hey, that's your choice. I mean, but it sounds like your partner knows, hey, this is not a marriage. I'm going to take care of your kids. That was clear from the beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
So when you're like, I don't know, I'm going to show how little I know about dating right now. So when you're out dating, do you even screen for people having kids or not? Because some people do. Some people are it's on all their profiles and all that. No kids anywhere near. Or you're I don't care.
In my dating profiles, it's more I'm child free. I don't have kids. I don't care if you do. Don't expect that I'm going to have them with you. Don't expect that I'm going to want that much to do with yours. I will say that it would probably be harder to see someone that has a little kid. If a baby or a toddler, that's a lot more in the way of a time commitment. For them as a parent. For me, the serious relationships that I've had with people who have kids, it's school age kids. So the kid themselves has a little bit more in the way of, agency. They go to school, they have another parent, so on and so forth. It's not, I don't want anybody leaving their baby at home with a babysitter to come and hang out with me. You be a parent at that time.
That's fair. We'll have to bring somebody in who's on the other side who could argue and be like, I only date people that are child free. And that's okay. Seriously, pick whatever you want.
Okay, so I could see where that would make a certain amount of sense. When I got married the second time, my second husband, now ex-husband, we actually did meet in a Facebook group for child-free people. And so that formed part of our connection initially, that we had kind of that big thing in common. And then, of course, we lived together, we got married, and so on and so forth. So the fact that we did not have kids, that was a much bigger deal. It's not a thing for me now because, again, I'm not going to live with anybody. So, if I was seeing someone and it was, I'm looking for somebody to move in with and help me raise my child, that is not me.
So from a financial standpoint, you're going to be a soloist for the rest of your life.
That is my hope. I mean, again, you can't predict these things, but in terms of what I would actually want, I don't want roommates. I don't want to live with a romantic partner, in any traditional sense. So yeah, I hope it's just me and the cats, in this apartment. Well, not in this apartment, in a house that I've bought for us.
So the other one I hear from soloists is, okay, well then who's going to make the decisions for me? It's the will, power of attorneys, all that. And then the other one is who am I going to give my money to? So who do you have making decisions for you?
Well, would be my serious partner of 4.5 years now at this point. And I did ask him just to make sure. I said, I know you don't want to talk about this, but if I do this will, paperwork, power of attorney, can you do that for me? And he did grudgingly agree. So I think we're okay there. Leaving money to anybody, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of getting into this Die with Zero thing. I requested the book from the library. It hasn't made its way to my Kindle yet. I'm hoping it will soon. But I don't want to leave a chunk of money to anybody. I would rather get the fullest out of my life and my money while I'm here.
And by the way, you have to leave enough to take care of the cats. Seriously, it sounds weird, but in your will, you just say, who's going to take the cats and here's some money to take care of them.
Yes.
And we have a separate episode coming out on Die with Zero. Bri and I did a book club on that. So keep an eye out for that. Oh,
excellent.
One of the things for soloists is you have to have the paperwork in place because the government systems and the bank all look for next of kin. And if you don't have a legal partner and you don't have kids, the systems just explode. And you may result, if you don't have paperwork in place, the state may take your money. That's possible. And they may make decisions for you. I do not want some random state person or healthcare person making decisions for me without any paperwork.
No.
So just one of those. Ashley's working on her paperwork, and what you heard her say is, you got to ask the person who you're going to say does this. And your partner agreed, at least, but, we'll have a different discussion on the grudgingly, It's not, nobody wants to talk about it.
Grudgingly more so, I don't want to think about this because I don't want you to die. More so like that. And this is a depressing topic of conversation, but it is a necessary topic of conversation.
Yeah, it is. So what advice would you give to other soloists out there?
Advice as far as money? Advice as far as what?
You tell me.
Well,
this is your time to share.
Oh, God. I'm always extolling the virtues of finding a finance professional to meet with, even if it's just once. Because I feel like having a third party look at your finances and give you unbiased, honest advice is incredibly valuable. Because you can just soldier along with your money and think that you're doing the right things. Oh, I think I'm putting enough away for retirement or to buy a house or whatever. But do you really have any idea? I work with people who have been writing about personal finance for years, and they still meet with CFPs and similar. And, they have a CPA who does their taxes because they recognize that having another set of eyes and having another opinion is always a good thing. So especially if you're on your own and you don't even have, a spouse to bounce money ideas off of, work with a professional, get somebody to look over your budget for you and, give you advice. If you're hoping to buy a house, maybe they can give you a reality check that, no, you can't buy a house in a year with no money down and still with a bunch of debt. So it's helpful.
I call it an accountability partner. It's somebody who can call you out on your BS. It can be a friend if the friend is in the right mindset of it, or professional or whatever it is. But it's just somebody who can go, hey, can I do this? And they're like, really? You said you had this other goal. Do you really want to do it? Like, we all have that. We all have the moments. What do we do when we're sad? Hit add to cart, right? You're just kind of like, I got to buy that. An accountability partner helps on that. And you're right. And I think a professional can help on that. I think the hard part is particularly for the soloists with no kids, no partner. There's not a finance book out there that says, hey, this is how to do it.
No, there's really not. I mean, I'd like to think that we're taking some steps today to put some good information out there, maybe.
Yeah, and Ashley's actually had a sneak peek. So I recently signed a deal for my second book, and it's going to dive into some of this. And what I'm saying is, first thing is you figure out what life you want to live. Second is your finances, and third, your taxes. And Ashley's a great example. She said, what life do I want to live? A stable life was kind of like the word of like, I want to have the house, I want to know where I live and all that. Is that kind of the start of that for you?
I mean, it might also be the end of it because I really like freelancing and I really like, having multiple special people into my life. And I really like having 3 cats, to commit to something. I feel like I could probably commit to home ownership, but beyond that, just to have a nice home base like that and to be comfortable enough and to know that I can always pay my bills and not have to worry. I guess that would be stability too. So being able to design a stable life in whatever way works for you and noting that stability doesn't have to be you're married and you work for the same company for years and you've got kids, and it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think the hard part of living the child-free life is there's not like a life plan or life script that we can follow that says, do this, because we've gone off that script completely. Right. And then you got to figure out this whole new path for you. I mean, you've been on 4 or 5 different scripts across your life. If you really think about it, you bouncing between different locations and lives and marriages, but it sounds like you're happy now. Is that fair?
I mean, yeah, I think I am. I mean, everybody has their ups and downs, but in terms of, an average day, I could say usually turns out to be pretty happy because I've got this flexibility now, especially with work that I never had before. And it's been really good.
That's great. And that's a great segue. So if somebody wants to hire you to do content writing or editing, where can they find you?
Well, I'm assuming you'll put a link to my job site in your show notes, but I am if you want help with your novel, your fiction writing, or, you want help with your nonfiction writing, you want somebody to write for your website, write content for your website. Personal finance is what I specialize in, but I used to do museums and I never knew anything about salt mining or canal boats or mules before I learned how to write about that stuff. So I'm really like a quick study. If you've got a topic you want to cover for your site and you want somebody to put some information together for you, check me out.
And I use her as my editor, so she makes
Lord
me
knows
sound good.
You need an editor. Yes, you do.
Hey,
it's good bones though. See, that's the thing. I can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So I think I'm doing pretty good with you.
She just complains because I don't use an outline, and I just have a conversation, and I don't know. But well, thank you very much for coming out and giving the soloist approach, and you'll hopefully see Ashley in a few other episodes. So we'll have her back sometime soon.
I'm ready. Sign me up.
That's all for this week's episode of Childfree Wealth Podcast. Be sure to follow Childfree Wealth on social media, email us at podcast@childfreewealth.com, or visit our website, www.childfreewealth.com.